The National Religious Broadcasters Association and the American Family Association said they are suing the FCC over the reinstatement of a form that would require broadcasters to report data on the race and gender of their staff. Form 395-B requires broadcasters to collect employee data on race, ethnicity, and gender and post the data on the FCC-hosted online public inspection file. According to the NRB, this form exceeds the FCC's statutory authority, violates the equal protection component of the Fifth Amendment and the free speech clause of the First Amendment. In short, it's more abuse from another rogue government agency. Let's bring in legal counsel for National Religious Broadcasters, Mike Farris. Mr. Farris, good to see you. What does the FCC, where does it get the authority to monitor who private companies are hiring?
Well, it's self-generated authority. It's a bootstrapping theory that they think that they have the ability to regulate anything and everything that broadcasters do, despite the fact that the Supreme Court's made it very clear that any kind of quota system is unconstitutional. And this is basically allowing the cancel culture to gather the raw materials they need to harass people that don't fit to their idealistic standards of having people, really, frankly, it's an ideological driven thing rather than even ethnic or race, but they want to dox people, cancel people that don't toe the line.
Wow. Yeah, in particular, religious people. Under Democrats, we've seen nothing but abuse of power and betrayal from our once trusted government agencies like the FCC. Tell us how the FCC would abuse further this data, put it in a real world term, demanding these demographic bits of data from broadcasters.
Well, if they were gathering the data to just, do studies and it wasn't published in a public format or was disaggregated, meaning you couldn't match, one station's forms with that station's personnel, then it would be completely a different situation. But this is on the publicly accessible website so that everybody can see exactly the makeup of every broadcaster that has the requisite number of employees. And that's really building, the building blocks, the tools that the left needs to harass people. It's like the Attorney General of California was struck down by the Supreme Court of the United States when they wanted to have all the conservative organizations disclose their donors to the AG of California. Mm-hmm. They were up to no good. The Supreme Court struck that down. We're hopeful that the Supreme Court will reach, or the Fifth Circuit before then, will reach that same result, saying this is gathering data you don't need for any legitimate purpose, and it can be used in nefarious ways to violate people's rights.
Well, let's broaden this discussion because I think you hit on something about the ideology component here. I suspect the FCC's flagrant abuse is a result of this cancerous, what I call the DIE agenda, being pushed by left-wing extremists in government. Diversity, inclusion, equity. But let's conduct a thought experiment here. Look at the National Football League, the National Basketball Association. Currently, their teams' businesses, they're not populated by, they are populated by merit, and they don't reflect America's population writ large. Should we insist that they clear their rosters and make sure their teams resemble the proper percentage of color? Here's another example. Companies like Boeing. They're going woke. Now we learned that the Federal Aviation Administration said Monday it's opened an investigation into Boeing after the company reported that workers at a South Carolina plant falsified inspection records on certain 787 planes. This overreaching government social engineering is going to have deadly consequences if we don't stop it, no?
Indeed, you're right. The Boeing example is very appropriate because years ago, they fired one of their vice presidents of public relations because of a statement he'd made about 30 years earlier when he was an Air Force officer saying women shouldn't be flying in combat kind of roles. And because of a statement made 30 years earlier, they fired him. They fired a competent person because he wasn't woke. And so that was really the signal that Boeing was not pursuing excellence, was not pursuing safety, was pursuing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that, I think, DIE example is, or the acronym is correctly named DIE, is because your company will die if you go in that trajectory. And our country will die if we don't get away from the idea that we're going to be anything other than a colorblind society. We need to be the kind of society that Martin
Indeed.
Luther King outlined.
Indeed. Mike Farris, keep us posted on the case, sir. We appreciate your time today.